The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pristine grounds of Mountain View Archery Club as Rebecca Chen adjusted her second-hand bow with trembling fingers. At 52, her graying hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her faded jeans and thrift store sweater made her stand out among the designer athletic wear surrounding her. The premium archery facility, nestled in the hills outside Denver, Colorado, was known for attracting serious competitors and wealthy hobbyists who could afford the hefty membership fees. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "Excuse me, ma'am," came a voice dripping with condescension behind her. Rebecca turned to see Marcus Blackwood, the club's most celebrated member, towering over her with his custom carbon fiber bow that cost more than most people's monthly salary. His perfectly pressed archery vest displayed an array of championship patches, and his entourage of admirers had formed a semicircle behind him. "I think you might be lost. The community center has beginner classes on Tuesdays." The laughter that followed was sharp and cutting, echoing across the range as other members stopped their practice to witness the spectacle. Rebecca's weathered hands remained steady despite the humiliation, but her eyes flickered with something deeper than embarrassment. For just a moment, her sleeve shifted slightly, revealing the edge of what appeared to be a tournament bracelet, from decades past, quickly covered again as she pulled her sweater down. "I have a membership," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the continued snickering from Marcus's followers. "Well," Marcus replied with theatrical surprise, "someone's feeling ambitious today." He gestured grandly toward the professional-grade targets downrange. "Tell you what, since you're so confident, why don't you show us what you've got? I'd hate for you to waste your entire afternoon missing the target completely." The crowd erupted again, phones appearing as people began recording what they assumed would be an entertaining display of incompetence. Rebecca stood motionless, her expression unreadable, as the mockery swirled around her. They had no idea they were about to humiliate the wrong woman. Rebecca Chen had always been a woman who preferred shadows to spotlight. At 52, she lived alone in a modest ranch house in Thornton, a working-class suburb north of Denver, where the mortgage was manageable on her librarian's salary and the neighbors minded their own business. The house itself was unremarkable, a beige structure with a small front yard and a garden where she grew tomatoes and herbs with the same quiet precision she applied to everything else in her life. Her daily routine was predictable and peaceful. Each morning, she would drive her 10-year-old Honda Civic to the Denver Public Library's main branch downtown, where she had worked for the past 8 years as a research librarian. Her colleagues knew her as reliable and thorough, someone who could locate the most obscure information with remarkable efficiency. What they didn't know was that her research skills had been honed in a very different context, one that required life or death accuracy in gathering intelligence. The patrons who sought her help saw a soft-spoken middle-aged woman with kind eyes and endless patience for their questions. She dressed conservatively, favored comfortable shoes, and kept her personal life private. During lunch breaks, she would sit alone in the library's quiet corner, reading historical biographies or working crossword puzzles with mechanical precision. Her desk was organized with military neatness, though she would laugh if anyone pointed it out, claiming she was simply naturally tidy. 25 years had passed since Rebecca had been honorably discharged from the United States Army, where she had served as a sniper instructor at Fort Benning. She was part of the first generation of women to excel in long-range precision shooting, earning respect in a field dominated by men through sheer skill and unwavering focus. Her service record included deployments to Somalia and Bosnia, where her ability to make impossible shots had saved countless lives and earned her commendations that now gathered dust in a shoebox beneath her bed. The transition to civilian life had been challenging. The intensity and purpose that had defined her military years felt impossible to replicate in the ordinary world. For several years after her discharge, she had drifted between jobs, struggling to find meaning in work that seemed trivial compared to the stakes she was accustomed to. The library position had offered her something she needed: quiet service to her community and the ability to help people find what they were looking for, even if the searches were now for historical documents rather than enemy positions. Rebecca had made a conscious decision to leave her military identity behind. The skills that had once defined her remained sharp through private practice sessions in remote areas outside the city, but she rarely spoke of her past. Her small circle of friends knew she had served, but she deflected specific questions with gentle humor and subject changes. The precise muscle memory that had once made her one of the Army's most effective snipers was now channeled into the methodical organization of library resources and the patient assistance of research requests. The decision to join Mountain View Archery Club had come after months of internal debate. Rebecca's doctor had suggested she find a hobby to combat the isolation that had crept into her life since her mother's death the previous year. The loss had left her more alone than ever, forcing her to confront how small her world had become. Archery seemed like a natural choice, given her background, but she had deliberately chosen civilian archery over any military-affiliated shooting. Sports. She wanted something entirely separate from her past, a fresh start in a new discipline. Her first visit to the club had been intimidating. The facility was impressive, with state-of-the-art equipment and manicured grounds that spoke of serious investment and high expectations. The membership fee had required her to dip into her modest savings, but she had convinced herself it would be worth it for the quality instruction and proper safety protocols. She purchased a basic recurve bow from a sporting goods store, researched proper technique online, and arrived for her first session with the same careful preparation she had once applied to military operations. The culture shock was immediate. Mountain View Archery Club attracted a specific demographic: affluent professionals, competitive athletes, and serious enthusiasts who treated the sport with intense dedication. Rebecca's simple equipment and quiet demeanor marked her as an outsider. From the moment she walked onto the range, the other members wore expensive gear and spoke in technical terms about equipment modifications and tournament strategies. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture, trying to understand the unspoken rules and hierarchies that governed this world. Marcus Blackwood had established himself as the unofficial leader of the club's social structure. Till 38, he was a successful real estate developer who had discovered archery during a corporate retreat and transformed it into both a passion and a platform for his considerable ego. His natural athletic ability, combined with expensive private coaching and top-tier equipment, had made him genuinely skilled. More importantly, his charismatic personality and financial resources had made him the center of the club's social ecosystem. Marcus surrounded himself with a rotating cast of admirers and hangers-on who competed for his attention and approval. Some were wealthy dilettantes who enjoyed the exclusivity of belonging to his inner circle. Others were skilled archers who benefited from his connections and sponsorship opportunities. All of them had learned to mirror his attitudes and behaviors, creating an environment where his judgments became gospel and his prejudices were amplified by the group dynamic. From Rebecca's first day at the club, Marcus had identified her as someone who didn't belong. Her equipment was basic, her clothing unremarkable, and her quiet manner suggested someone who lacked the competitive fire he associated with serious archery. When she signed up for intermediate classes despite being a beginner, he saw it as presumptuous. When she practiced with focused intensity while others socialized, he interpreted it as antisocial. Her age made her an easy target for dismissive comments about middle-aged women having midlife crises. The harassment began subtly. Marcus would make jokes about weekend warriors and library ladies trying to be Katniss Everdeen within her earshot. His followers would snicker appreciatively, encouraging him to escalate the commentary. During group lessons, he would offer unsolicited advice in a patronizing tone, explaining basic concepts she already understood while speaking loudly enough for others to hear. When she performed well, he would attribute it to luck or suggest the instructor was going easy on her. Rebecca's response to the initial provocations was to ignore them completely. She had faced far worse treatment during her military career and had learned that engagement often escalated situations unnecessarily. Her focus remained on improving her technique and enjoying the meditative aspects of archery that had drawn her to the sport. She would arrive for her scheduled practice times, work through her routines with methodical precision, and leave without engaging in the social dynamics that seemed to consume other members. This restraint, rather than discouraging Marcus, seemed to embolden him. He interpreted her silence as weakness and her focus as aloofness. The psychological profile he had constructed of her was that of an insecure woman trying to prove something to herself, someone who could be easily intimidated into abandoning her membership if enough pressure was applied. He began to view her presence as a personal challenge to his authority and the club's standards. The escalation accelerated when Rebecca began showing noticeable improvement in her shooting. Despite her basic equipment and lack of formal coaching, her scores steadily increased week after week. Her form became more consistent, her groupings tighter, and her confidence more apparent. Other members began to notice her progress, and a few offered congratulations or asked about her practice routine. This attention, minor as it was, seemed to irritate Marcus disproportionately. The breaking point came during a club meeting where upcoming tournaments and events were discussed. Rebecca had been quietly attending these meetings for 2 months, listening but rarely speaking. When the topic of the annual club championship came up, Marcus made a show of explaining the entry, requirements and skill levels expected. His tone was clearly intended to discourage certain members from participating, and his eyes lingered on Rebecca as he emphasized the competitive nature of the event. "This isn't a participation trophy situation," he announced to the room. "The club championship represents our community to the broader archery world. We need to maintain certain standards and ensure that our competitors can actually represent us with dignity." The message was unmistakable, and several members glanced uncomfortably in Rebecca's direction. After the meeting, as members dispersed toward their cars, Marcus approached Rebecca directly for the first time. His usual audience trailed behind him, anticipating another entertaining exchange. "Rebecca, right?" he said with false friendliness. "I noticed you seemed interested in the championship discussion. I hope you're not thinking of entering. I'd hate to see you embarrass yourself in front of the regional archery community." Rebecca looked up from packing her equipment bag, meeting his eyes directly for perhaps the first time since joining the club. "I was considering it," she said simply. The admission seemed to surprise him. He had expected denial or deflection, not quiet confirmation. "Well," he said, recovering quickly, "I suppose everyone needs goals. Just remember that tournament archery is very different from casual practice. The pressure, the standards, the level of competition. It's not for everyone." His followers nodded sagely, as if he had imparted profound wisdom. "I understand," Rebecca replied, closing her bag and slinging it over her shoulder. Thank you for the advice." As she walked toward her car, she could hear the renewed laughter and commentary behind her. Marcus was already spinning the conversation into another anecdote about delusional members who didn't understand their own limitations. His audience was appreciative, feeding off his confidence and certainty about who belonged in their world and who didn't. That night, Rebecca sat in her living room with a cup of tea, staring at the tournament entry form she had picked up at the meeting. The championship was 6 weeks away, giving her time to prepare if she decided to enter. The entry fee was substantial by her standards, and the competition would be fierce. But something about Marcus's dismissive certainty had awakened something in her that had been dormant for too long. She walked to her bedroom and pulled out the shoebox from beneath her bed. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, were the medals and commendations from her military service. At the bottom of the box was a photograph of her in uniform, holding a rifle and standing with her unit. The woman in the photograph looked confident and capable, someone who had earned respect through demonstrated skill rather than social positioning. Rebecca barely recognized herself. The next morning, she mailed the tournament entry form with her fee. She also made a call to a sporting goods store that specialized in archery equipment. It was time to take this seriously. Over the following weeks, Rebecca's routine changed dramatically. She began arriving at the club during off-peak hours when fewer members were present, allowing her to practice without the constant commentary and social pressures. She invested in upgraded equipment, not the flashy, expensive gear that Marcus favored, but carefully selected pieces that matched her developing technique and physical requirements. Most importantly, she began to approach archery with the same systematic methodology that had once made her an elite marksman. The transformation was subtle but noticeable to anyone paying attention. Her stance became more consistent, her draw smoother, her release cleaner. She studied videos of Olympic archers, analyzed her own form using her phone camera, and kept detailed logs of her practice sessions. The muscle memory from her military training began to integrate with her civilian archery technique, creating a hybrid approach that was uniquely effective. Marcus and his followers initially dismissed these improvements as temporary luck or the natural progression of a beginner. But as Rebecca's scores continued to climb and her consistency became undeniable, the commentary shifted toward more pointed criticisms. They questioned whether she was somehow cheating or using illegal equipment modifications. They suggested that her improvement was artificial, the result of private coaching she couldn't afford or techniques that violated the spirit of fair competition. During group practice sessions, Marcus began to escalate his interference. He would position himself near her shooting lane, creating distractions through loud conversations or exaggerated reactions to his own shots. His followers would cluster around her area, making comments about her equipment or technique that were designed to undermine her confidence. When she achieved particularly good scores, they would find reasons to question the validity of the results or minimize the significance of the achievement. The psychological pressure extended beyond the range itself. Rebecca discovered that her practice times and preferences had become topics of discussion among the club's social media groups. Photos of her equipment appeared online with mocking commentary about bargain hunters and gear shaming. Her membership status was questioned publicly, with suggestions that she hadn't properly earned her place at the club or that her continued presence was somehow detrimental to the club's reputation. Despite the escalating harassment, Rebecca maintained her composure and focus. She continued to arrive for her scheduled practice times, work through her routines with methodical precision, and leave without engaging in the provocations. Her scores continued to improve steadily, and her confidence grew with each successful session. She began to rediscover aspects of herself that had been buried under years of civilian anonymity. 3 weeks before the championship, Marcus decided to make his challenge more direct and public. During a busy Saturday afternoon practice session, with most of the club's active members present, he approached Rebecca as she was setting up for her routine. His usual entourage was in position, and several other members had positioned themselves to watch the anticipated confrontation. "Rebecca," he called out loudly enough to draw attention from across the range. "I've been watching your progress, and I have to say you've surprised everyone with how quickly you've improved." His tone was superficially complimentary, but the underlying mockery was apparent to everyone present. "In fact, your scores have gotten so good that some people are starting to wonder if you might actually be competitive in the championship." Rebecca continued her setup process, checking her equipment with the same systematic thoroughness she always displayed. "I'm planning to do my best," she said without looking up. "Well, that's admirable," Marcus continued, playing to his audience. "But I'd hate to see you waste your entry fee on something that might be beyond your current skill level. Tournament pressure is very different from practice conditions. Maybe we should have a little friendly demonstration just to help you understand what you'll be facing." The suggestion created a buzz of anticipation among the watching members. Marcus was known for his dramatic challenges and his ability to use pressure situations to expose the limitations of other members. He had used this tactic before to humiliate people he considered pretentious or overconfident, turning their own ambitions against them in public demonstrations of their inadequacy. Rebecca finally looked up from her equipment, studying Marcus's face for a moment before responding. "What kind of demonstration did you have in mind?" "Nothing too complex," Marcus replied with false modesty. "Just a simple accuracy challenge. We each shoot 10 arrows at standard tournament distance. Best cumulative score wins. If you're really ready for championship-level competition, this should be easy for you." The trap was obvious to everyone present. Marcus was an accomplished archer with years of experience and expensive equipment. Rebecca, despite her recent improvements, was still considered a relative beginner with basic gear. The outcome seemed predetermined, and the public nature of the challenge would make any failure particularly humiliating. Several members exchanged glances that mixed anticipation with sympathy for what seemed like inevitable embarrassment. Rebecca was quiet for several seconds, considering the challenge and its implications. She could decline, which would be interpreted as an admission of her limitations and would likely end her credibility at the club permanently. She could accept and lose, which would provide Marcus with the public victory he was seeking and probably discourage her from entering the championship. Or she could reveal exactly who she was and what she was capable of, ending her anonymity but potentially reclaiming her dignity. "All right," she said simply, "let's do it." The word spread quickly through the club, and within minutes, nearly every member present had gathered around the designated shooting lanes. Phones appeared as people prepared to document what they expected to be an entertaining mismatch. Marcus was in his element, joking with the crowd and making a show of his pre-shot routine. He had chosen his favorite bow, a custom composite model, worth more than Rebecca's monthly salary, and was wearing his lucky shooting vest with all his championship patches prominently displayed. Rebecca quietly completed her equipment check and took her position. She had chosen to use her newer recurve bow, a mid-range model that represented a significant upgrade from her original purchase, but was still modest compared to Marcus's equipment. Her shooting form had evolved considerably over the past few months, incorporating elements of her military training with the classical techniques she had learned through civilian instruction. She looked focused, but not nervous. Methodical, rather, than rushed. Marcus shot first, as tradition dictated for the challenger. His form was polished and confident, the result of extensive coaching and thousands of practice shots. His first 3 arrows grouped tightly in the gold ring, earning appreciative murmurs from the watching crowd. He made a show of checking his scores and nodding with satisfaction, playing up the drama for his audience. Rebecca's turn was markedly different in style and presentation. She approached the line with quiet efficiency, her pre-shot routine economical and purposeful. There was no wasted motion, no theatrical elements, just the systematic preparation of someone who had done this thousands of times under much more demanding circumstances. Her first arrow flew with surprising speed and precision, striking the center of the target with a satisfying thunk that seemed louder than Marcus's shots. As the competition progressed, the mood of the watching crowd began to shift. Marcus's shots were consistently good, maintaining the standard that had made him the club's star performer. But Rebecca's arrows were finding their mark with mechanical precision, grouping tighter than anyone had expected and consistently scoring higher than his attempts. By the halfway point, it was clear that the anticipated mismatch was not developing as predicted. Marcus's confidence began to show cracks as he realized the challenge was not going according to plan. His subsequent shots became more forced, his form slightly less consistent as pressure and surprise affected his concentration. The crowd's reactions became more subdued as they processed the unexpected competitiveness of the match. Rebecca, meanwhile, continued with the same methodical approach, each shot a replica of the previous one in terms of form and precision. With 2 arrows remaining for each competitor, Rebecca held a slight lead. Marcus was facing the unfamiliar experience of being behind in a challenge he had initiated, and his discomfort was becoming apparent to everyone present. His next shot was rushed, pulling slightly to the left and scoring lower than his previous attempts. The mistake drew surprised murmurs from the crowd, who had rarely seen him display such inconsistency. Rebecca's 9th arrow struck the exact center of the bullseye with enough force to split the knock of her previous shot. The crowd fell silent as they processed what they had just witnessed. It was a shot that demonstrated not just accuracy, but the kind of precision that spoke to extensive experience and exceptional skill. Several members began to look at her with new curiosity, wondering who this quiet woman really was. Marcus's final shot was adequate but uninspired, clearly affected by the pressure and the realization that he was facing a much more skilled opponent than anyone had anticipated. As he stepped back from the line, his usual confidence had been replaced by visible confusion and concern. The challenge that was supposed to expose Rebecca's limitations had instead revealed capabilities that none of them had suspected. Rebecca prepared for her final shot with the same calm efficiency she had displayed throughout the match. But something had changed in her demeanor. For the first time since joining the club, she looked completely at ease, as if she had finally found her element. As she drew the bowstring back, her stance shifted slightly into a position that was unmistakably military in its precision and economy of motion. The arrow flew with perfect trajectory, striking the bullseye with such force and accuracy that it completely split her previous shot down the middle, sending the wooden shaft fragments scattering across the ground behind the target. The impact was so clean and powerful that several people in the crowd actually stepped backward in surprise. For several seconds, no one spoke or moved. The shot was so extraordinary that it seemed to suspend normal social interactions while everyone processed what they had just witnessed. Marcus stood frozen, staring at the target with an expression that mixed disbelief with the dawning realization that he had seriously misjudged his opponent. "That's what we used to call a robin hood shot," Rebecca said quietly, breaking the silence as she began to pack her equipment. "Takes quite a bit of practice to do it consistently." The comment was delivered so casually that it took a moment for the implications to sink in. The word consistently suggested that this wasn't a lucky accident, but a demonstration of reproducible, Skill, the phrase used to call, hinted at a background and experience that had been completely hidden from everyone at the club. As Rebecca walked toward her car, the crowd remained largely silent, still processing what they had witnessed. Marcus's followers looked uncertainly between their leader and the retreating figure, unsure how to react to his very public defeat. Several other members approached the target to examine the split arrow, confirming that the shot was even more impressive up close than it had appeared from the shooting line. Marcus himself remained motionless for several minutes after Rebecca had left, staring at the target that had become a monument to his miscalculation. The challenge that was supposed to establish his dominance and expose her pretensions had instead created the most dramatic reversal anyone at the club had ever witnessed. The story of the match spread through the local archery community within hours, carried by social media posts and excited phone calls. Video clips of Rebecca's final shot began circulating on regional archery forums, generating speculation about her identity and background. Several people claimed to recognize her shooting style or suspected military training, but no one could definitively place her. By evening, Rebecca had received multiple calls and messages from club members, tournament organizers, and local archery coaches. Some wanted to congratulate her on the impressive display. Others were curious about her background and training. A few were interested in offering coaching services or sponsorship opportunities. She politely declined most requests for interviews or meetings, maintaining the same privacy she had always preferred. That night, Rebecca sat in her living room with the tournament entry confirmation and a cup of tea, contemplating how dramatically her situation had changed in a single afternoon. The anonymity she had carefully maintained was probably gone forever, at least within the local archery community. But she had also reclaimed something important that had been missing from her life for too long. The respect that came from demonstrated competence rather than social positioning. The championship was still 3 weeks away, but she was no longer preparing in isolation or facing dismissive skepticism about her abilities. The shot that split the bullseye had changed everything, revealing not just her skill, but her true identity as someone who belonged among the best archers in the region. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight she felt like herself again for the first time in years. The morning after Rebecca's dramatic demonstration, Mountain View Archery Club buzzed with an energy that had nothing to do with the crisp autumn air. Word of the split arrow had spread beyond the immediate witnesses, creating ripples of curiosity and speculation throughout Denver's archery community. Rebecca arrived at her usual early hour, hoping to practice in relative peace before the days. Regular members appeared, but she found the parking lot already half full, despite the 6 a.m. opening time. Inside the clubhouse, conversations stopped mid-sentence as she walked past. Heads turned with barely concealed interest, and whispered discussions resumed the moment she was out of earshot. The front desk staff, who had previously treated her with polite indifference, now greeted her with obvious enthusiasm and offers of assistance she had never received before. The transformation in her social standing was immediate and complete, though not entirely comfortable for someone who had spent years cultivating anonymity. Marcus was notably absent from the morning session, something that hadn't happened in the 3 months since Rebecca had joined the club. His usual training time coincided with hers, and his absence created an unusual quiet on the range that several members commented on. His inner circle appeared uncertain how to proceed without their leader's guidance, clustering together in hushed conversations that ceased whenever Rebecca approached their area. The club's head instructor, Patricia Owens, sought Rebecca out during a break between practice rounds. Patricia was a former Olympic alternate who commanded universal respect for her technical knowledge and fair treatment of all members, regardless of their social standing or financial resources. She had maintained professional neutrality during the previous months of tension, but her expression now carried curiosity mixed with something approaching reverence. "Rebecca," Patricia said, approaching with careful diplomacy, "I've been thinking about yesterday's shooting demonstration. That level of precision suggests extensive training, probably formal instruction at a very high level. I'm wondering if you might be interested in some advanced coaching, or perhaps sharing your background with some of our developing archers." The invitation was generous and well-intentioned, but it carried implications that made Rebecca uncomfortable. Revealing more about her military experience would inevitably lead to questions about her service record, her transition to civilian life, and the reasons she had chosen to keep her background private. The attention she was already receiving felt overwhelming after years of deliberate obscurity. "I appreciate the offer," Rebecca replied carefully, "but I'm still learning the civilian approach to archery. I think I need more time to develop my technique before I could be helpful to others." Patricia nodded understandingly, but her expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by Rebecca's deflection. As a former elite athlete herself, she recognized the signs of someone with extensive competitive experience, regardless of the specific discipline. The muscle memory, the mental focus, and the technical precision Rebecca had displayed were not the products of casual hobby shooting. Throughout the morning session, Rebecca found herself the center of subtle attention from other members who had previously ignored her completely. Some approached with congratulations and questions about her shooting technique. Others maintained distance, but watched her practice with obvious interest, studying her form and equipment choices. The social dynamics that had once excluded her had reversed, but the constant scrutiny felt almost as uncomfortable as the previous isolation. During lunch break, Rebecca retreated to her car to escape the attention and check her phone. She discovered 17 missed calls, dozens of text messages, and over 40 email notifications. Local archery clubs were extending invitations to exhibitions and tournaments. Equipment manufacturers were offering sponsorship opportunities. Regional shooting coaches were requesting meetings to discuss training partnerships. A reporter from Colorado Sports Weekly wanted to schedule an interview about hidden talent in amateur athletics. The volume of contact was overwhelming for someone who had spent years avoiding any form of public attention. Rebecca realized that her demonstration had consequences far beyond winning a simple challenge at her local club. The archery community in Colorado was smaller and more interconnected than she had understood, and exceptional performances were noticed and discussed throughout the network. Among the messages was one that made her pause. The caller identification showed a number from Virginia with a 703 area code that she recognized as military. The voicemail was from Colonel Sarah Martinez, her former commanding officer from Fort Benning, who had somehow learned about the archery demonstration through contacts in the veteran community. "Rebecca, this is Sarah Martinez. I heard an interesting story about someone matching your description, making some impressive shots at a civilian archery club. I thought you might want to know that word travels fast in our circles, especially when it involves someone with your particular background and capabilities. Give me a call when you have a chance. There might be some opportunities you'd be interested in hearing about." The message confirmed Rebecca's growing realization that her anonymity was probably gone permanently. Military communities maintained informal networks that could identify former service members based on descriptions of their skills and behavior patterns. If Colonel Martinez had connected her civilian archery performance to her military service record, others would follow shortly. That afternoon, Rebecca returned to the club for her regular practice session, hoping the novelty of her previous day's performance had begun to fade. Instead, she found an even larger crowd than the morning had produced. Several people she didn't recognize were present, including a man with professional camera equipment who was clearly documenting the club's activities for some form of media coverage. Marcus finally appeared during the afternoon session, but his usual commanding presence had been replaced by something closer to cautious uncertainty. He maintained distance from Rebecca and avoided eye contact with most other members, focusing intently on his own practice routine. His shooting form remained technically sound, but the confident swagger that had characterized his previous performances was noticeably absent. The dynamic between Marcus and his followers had shifted substantially. Where they had once hung on his every word and mirrored his attitudes automatically, they now seemed uncertain about appropriate responses to the changed social environment. Some continued to cluster around him out of habit, but their interactions lacked the enthusiastic energy that had previously defined their relationships. Others appeared to be re-evaluating their allegiances based on the new information about relative skill levels within the club. Rebecca's practice session drew an audience that made concentrated shooting difficult. Members positioned themselves around her lane, ostensibly conducting their own practice, but clearly focused on observing her technique and performance. The photographer moved discreetly around the range, capturing images of her form and equipment. Patricia Owens appeared periodically, offering technical suggestions that seemed designed more to engage Rebecca in conversation than to provide necessary instruction. The pressure of constant observation began to affect Rebecca's shooting consistency. Shots that would have been automatic under normal circumstances required additional concentration to maintain her usual precision. The meditative aspects of archery that had drawn her to the sport were overwhelmed by the social dynamics and performance expectations that now surrounded every arrow she released. During a break between practice rounds, a new member approached, her with obvious nervousness. Janet Morrison was a recently retired elementary school teacher who had joined the club only weeks before Rebecca's demonstration. She had been one of the few members who had shown friendliness toward Rebecca during the previous months, though they had never engaged in extended conversation. "Rebecca," Janet said quietly, "I wanted to thank you for what you did yesterday. Marcus and his friends have been making this place uncomfortable for anyone who doesn't fit their image of what an archer should look like. It was inspiring to see someone stand up to that behavior, even if you didn't intend it that way." The comment revealed a perspective Rebecca hadn't fully considered. Her response to Marcus's challenge had been motivated by personal pride and the desire to demonstrate her capabilities, not by any intention to address broader patterns of exclusionary behavior at the club. But Janet's observation suggested that other members had experienced similar treatment and viewed Rebecca's performance as a form of advocacy for their inclusion. "I just shot my best," Rebecca replied, uncomfortable with the suggestion that her actions carried broader social significance. "I wasn't trying to make any particular statement. Sometimes the most powerful statements are the ones we make, without intending to," Janet observed. "Either way, you've changed things here. People are talking about skill and technique instead of equipment costs and social connections. That's a good change." As the afternoon progressed, Rebecca became increasingly aware of the conversations happening around her. Members were discussing her shooting technique, speculating about her background, and reassessing their own assumptions about what constituted legitimate membership in the club's community. The hierarchy that had seemed fixed and natural was being questioned in ways that extended beyond her specific situation. The club's management was also responding to the changed dynamics. Frank Richardson, the club's general manager, approached Rebecca near the end of her practice session with an expression that mixed business interest with genuine curiosity. "Rebecca, I hope you don't mind me interrupting your practice," Frank said with the carefully modulated tone of someone accustomed to managing delicate situations. I've been getting calls all day from members of the Regional Archery Association, equipment vendors, and media outlets interested in featuring our club. It seems your demonstration yesterday has generated quite a bit of attention for Mountain View. The comment carried implicit expectations that made Rebecca uncomfortable. She had never sought to become a spokesperson for the club or to generate publicity for the facility. Her membership had been purchased for personal recreation and skill development, not for marketing purposes or community representation. I was just practicing, Rebecca said simply. I didn't expect it to generate so much interest. Of course not, Frank replied smoothly. But talent like yours doesn't stay hidden long in a community like ours. I'm wondering if you might be interested in participating in some promotional activities for the club. Nothing too demanding, just some demonstration sessions and perhaps an interview or two. We could certainly make it worth your while financially. The offer represented exactly the kind of public attention Rebecca had been trying to avoid since leaving the military. Her civilian life had been carefully constructed to minimize visibility and maintain privacy. Accepting promotional opportunities would mean abandoning the anonymity she had worked years to establish. I appreciate the offer, Rebecca replied carefully, but I prefer to keep my archery practice private. I'm not really interested in demonstrations or interviews. Frank's expression suggested disappointment but not surprise. As an experienced manager, he had probably anticipated that someone with Rebecca's obvious desire for privacy might decline promotional opportunities. I understand completely, he said. The offer remains open if you change your mind. In the meantime, please let me know if there's anything the club can do to support your training. As evening approached and the club began to empty, Rebecca found herself alone on the range for the first time since her demonstration. The quiet felt unusual after a day of constant attention and conversation. She began to work through her regular practice routine, focusing on form and consistency rather than the dramatic shots that had created yesterday's spectacle. The solitude was interrupted by the arrival of Marcus, who had apparently waited for the other members to leave before approaching her. His usual entourage was absent, and his demeanor carried none of the aggressive confidence that had characterized their previous interactions. He positioned himself several lanes away and began his own practice routine, but his frequent glances in her direction suggested he wanted to initiate conversation. After 20 minutes of shooting in parallel, Marcus finally approached Rebecca's lane. His expression was complex, mixing embarrassment with curiosity and what might have been genuine respect. The interaction felt unprecedented, given their previous relationship, and Rebecca wasn't certain how to respond to his changed attitude. "Rebecca," Marcus said, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone, "I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I completely misjudged your capabilities, and I made assumptions that weren't fair or accurate." The apology surprised Rebecca both for its directness and its apparent sincerity. Marcus had built his social position at the club on projecting confidence and superiority, making any admission of error potentially damaging to his carefully constructed image. The fact that he was offering it privately, without an audience to witness his humility, suggested genuine motivation rather than calculated public relations. "Thank you," Rebecca replied simply, uncertain what additional response was appropriate or expected. Marcus seemed to interpret her brevity as encouragement to continue. "I keep thinking about that final shot you made. The precision, the technique, the confidence. That wasn't beginner's luck or casual hobby shooting. You've had serious training, haven't you?" The question was direct, but not aggressive, carrying curiosity rather than challenge. Rebecca realized that Marcus was trying to understand how he had so completely misjudged her capabilities and background. His competitive nature required explanation for performances that exceeded his expectations. I had some instruction years ago, Rebecca said carefully, maintaining the same level of privacy she had preserved throughout her membership. Military? Marcus asked, his tone suggesting he had already reached that conclusion through his own analysis. Rebecca paused, considering how much information to share. Her demonstration had probably made some form of revelation inevitable, but she remained reluctant to discuss details of her service record or the specific nature of her training. Yes, she said finally, but that was a long time ago. Marcus nodded slowly, processing the confirmation of his suspicions. I should have recognized the signs, he said. The stance, the breathing technique, the way you approach each shot, like it's a mission-critical task. I've seen that before in veterans who transition to civilian shooting sports. The observation was more perceptive than Rebecca had expected, suggesting that Marcus's understanding of archery extended beyond the social dynamics that had dominated their previous interactions. His recognition of military shooting techniques indicated experience with competitive archery communities that included veteran participants. What branch? Marcus asked, his tone remaining respectful rather than invasive. Army, Rebecca replied, deciding that basic service information was probably harmless to share. Combat specialty? Marcus continued, his questions becoming more specific. Rebecca hesitated, recognizing that her answer would probably lead to additional questions about deployment history and specific training. Something like that, she said evasively. Marcus seemed to understand that he was approaching the limits of what Rebecca was willing to discuss. Well, he said, whatever your background, you're clearly operating at a level far beyond what any of us realized. I owe you a real apology for the way I treated you. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Patricia Owens, who appeared surprised to find both Rebecca and Marcus practicing together after hours. Her expression suggested curiosity about the nature of their interaction, given their previous relationship and yesterday's dramatic confrontation. Am I interrupting something? Patricia asked diplomatically. Just clearing the air, Marcus replied. Turns out I had some misconceptions that needed correcting. Patricia nodded understandingly, her experience as an instructor having familiarized her with the social dynamics that could develop between club members. Rebecca, I wanted to follow up on our conversation from this morning. I've been thinking about your shooting technique, and I believe you might benefit from some specialized coaching focused on competitive tournament preparation. The suggestion represented another attempt to draw Rebecca deeper into the club's formal structure and competitive community. While well-intentioned, it carried implications for increased visibility and commitment that conflicted with her preference for privacy and casual participation. I'm not sure I'm ready for tournament competition, Rebecca replied. I'm still adjusting to civilian archery techniques. Actually, Marcus interjected unexpectedly, I think Patricia's right. Your technique is already beyond most tournament competitors I've seen. The question isn't whether you're ready for competition, but whether competition is ready for you. The comment represented a complete reversal from Marcus's previous attitude toward Rebecca's capabilities and potential. His endorsement of Patricia's suggestion carried weight within the club's social structure, potentially influencing other members' perceptions of Rebecca's skill level and competitive potential. Patricia looked pleased by Marcus's support for her assessment. The state championship is in 8 weeks, she said. That would give us time to work on tournament-specific techniques and mental preparation. Your fundamentals are clearly solid, but competitive archery has unique pressures and protocols that require specific training. Rebecca found herself facing a decision that would determine the direction of her involvement in archery and her relationship with the club community. Accepting coaching for tournament competition would mean abandoning her preference for private practice and casual participation. It would also increase the likelihood that her military background and specific training would become more widely known within the archery community. "Can I think about it?" Rebecca asked, buying time to consider the implications of deeper involvement. "Of course," Patricia replied, "but don't wait too long. Tournament preparation takes time, and you'd be starting from a compressed schedule already." As the evening session concluded and the three archers prepared to leave, Rebecca realized that her situation at Mountain View Archery Club had fundamentally changed in ways that extended far beyond her relationship with Marcus. The demonstration that had been intended to address a specific challenge had created expectations and opportunities that would be difficult to navigate while maintaining her preferred level of privacy. The drive home gave her time to process the day's events and their implications for her future at the club. The social isolation and hostile environment that had characterized her first months of membership had been replaced by acceptance and opportunity. But the change brought new forms of pressure and visibility that were equally challenging in their own way. Over the following days, the pattern of increased attention and altered social dynamics continued to intensify. Rebecca's morning practice sessions, which had once been solitary affairs, now attracted small audiences of members who wanted to observe her technique and equipment choices. Her scores and shooting patterns became topics of discussion in the club's social media groups, with detailed analysis of her form and speculation about her training methods. The regional archery community's interest in Rebecca's background and capabilities continued to grow. Tournament organizers contacted the club, inquiring about her competition plans. Equipment manufacturers offered product endorsements and testing opportunities. Coaching services proposed training partnerships that could enhance her competitive potential while providing them with marketing opportunities. The attention created practical challenges for Rebecca's training routine. The meditative aspects of archery that had initially attracted her to the sport were difficult to maintain under constant observation. Concentration became more challenging when every shot was being analyzed and discussed by watching members. The simple pleasure of improvement through practice was complicated by expectations for dramatic performances and consistent excellence. Marcus's attitude toward Rebecca evolved from apologetic respect to something approaching mentorship interest. He began positioning himself as an informal advocate for her participation in competitive events, using his influence within the club to promote her involvement in tournaments and advanced training opportunities. His motivation seemed to include genuine respect for her abilities combined with desire to associate himself with her impressive capabilities. The transformation in Marcus's behavior had broader effects on the club's social dynamics. His previous followers found themselves uncertain about appropriate attitudes toward Rebecca, torn between their habits of mirroring Marcus's opinions and their own observations of her exceptional skills. Some adapted quickly to the changed hierarchy, while others seemed confused by the reversal in their leader's assessment of someone they had been encouraged to dismiss. Rebecca's relationship with other club members also continued to evolve. Janet Morrison and several other members who had experienced exclusionary treatment began to view her as an unintentional champion for inclusive club culture. They sought her out for conversation and support, creating social obligations that Rebecca found difficult to manage while maintaining her preference for privacy. The club's management increased their efforts to capitalize on Rebecca's presence for promotional purposes. Frank Richardson approached her multiple times with refined versions of his previous offers, suggesting demonstration events, media interviews, and sponsorship opportunities that could benefit both her personal development and the club's marketing efforts. Each new request and opportunity forced Rebecca to confront the fundamental tension between her desire for private recreational archery and the public attention that her exceptional skills inevitably generated. The anonymous library life that had provided comfortable obscurity was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain as her archery performance drew interest from expanding circles of the shooting sports community. The situation reached a critical point when Rebecca discovered that someone had posted video footage of her split arrow demonstration on social media platforms beyond the local archery community. The clips had been shared on general sports forums, military veteran groups, and recreational shooting channels, generating thousands of views and hundreds of comments speculating about her identity and background. The viral spread of the footage meant that Rebecca's anonymity was probably compromised permanently, at least within communities interested in precision shooting sports. The careful separation she had maintained between her civilian life and her military background was breaking down as people connected her current performance with speculation about her previous training and experience. That evening, Rebecca sat in her living room with a cup of tea and her father's old military handbook, contemplating the choices that lay ahead. She could continue trying to maintain privacy while managing the increased attention, accept the public role that seemed to be developing around her archery skills, or withdraw from the club entirely to preserve the anonymity that had defined her civilian life. The handbook fell open to a page about adapting to unexpected tactical situations, advice that seemed relevant to her current circumstances despite the dramatically different context. Her father had taught her that sometimes the best response to changing conditions was to embrace new opportunities rather than fighting to maintain old positions. As she considered her options, Rebecca realized that the split arrow demonstration had been more than a response to Marcus's challenge. It had been a moment of choosing authenticity over anonymity, skill over safety, and engagement over isolation. The consequences were complex and sometimes uncomfortable, but they had also restored aspects of herself that she had been missing for years. The next morning would bring new decisions about tournament participation, media attention, and the level of public visibility she was willing to accept. But tonight, for the first time since leaving the military, Rebecca felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. 3 weeks later, Rebecca stood at the entrance of the Colorado State Archery Championships venue, watching busloads of competitors unload equipment cases and warm-up gear. The Denver Convention Center had been transformed into a massive shooting facility, with dozens of regulation lanes stretching across the main exhibition hall. The scale was intimidating even for someone with her background, representing a level of organized competition she hadn't experienced since her military days. The decision to compete had come gradually, influenced by Patricia's persistent coaching offers and the growing realization that avoiding competition wouldn't restore her. Anonymity. Colonel Martinez had called twice more, each conversation revealing that Rebecca's performance was being discussed within military shooting circles across multiple branches of service. Former colleagues were reaching out through informal networks, curious about her transition to civilian archery and impressed by reports of her continued precision. Patricia appeared beside her, carrying a clipboard thick with tournament documentation and wearing the focused expression Rebecca had learned to associate with competitive preparation. Over the past 2 weeks, their coaching relationship had evolved into something approaching friendship, built on mutual respect for technical excellence and shared understanding of performance pressure. Registration closes in 20 minutes, Patricia said, checking her watch with practiced efficiency. Are you ready for this? Rebecca nodded, though her definition of readiness had evolved significantly since accepting Patricia's coaching. The technical preparation had been straightforward, refining her form and practicing tournament protocols until they became automatic. The mental preparation had been more challenging, requiring her to reconcile her preference for privacy with the public nature of competitive archery. The past 3 weeks had brought steady pressure to embrace opportunities that extended far beyond simple tournament participation. Equipment manufacturers had increased their sponsorship offers after learning about her military background. Television producers had expressed interest in featuring her story as part of sports documentaries about hidden talent and second careers. Youth archery programs had requested her participation in promotional events designed to encourage participation among underrepresented demographics. Rebecca had declined most opportunities, but the volume of requests had reinforced her understanding that exceptional performance in any public arena inevitably generated attention and expectations. The state championship represented a compromise between complete withdrawal and full embrace of competitive visibility. It would allow her to test her skills against elite competitors while maintaining control over her level of ongoing involvement. The registration process revealed the tournament's scale and significance within Colorado's archery community. Competitors ranged from teenage phenoms pursuing Olympic development pathways to veteran shooters with decades of tournament experience. Equipment displays showcased cutting-edge technology that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Sponsor banners represented international manufacturers whose products were used by world-class athletes. Rebecca's presence generated immediate attention from competitors and officials who had heard reports of her dramatic emergence at Mountain View. Several shooters approached with questions about her background and training methods. Tournament officials made note of her registration with obvious interest, recognizing that exceptional performances by unknown competitors could generate media coverage and spectator excitement. Marcus had insisted on attending the tournament as an unofficial supporter, despite Rebecca's suggestions that his presence wasn't necessary. His motivation seemed to combine genuine interest in her performance with desire to maintain association with someone whose capabilities had impressed the broader archery community. He positioned himself among the spectators with obvious pride, introducing himself to other supporters as someone who had witnessed Rebecca's abilities firsthand. The preliminary rounds began with individual ranking sessions designed to establish seeding for elimination competition. Rebecca's assigned lane placed her between two accomplished competitors whose tournament resumes included multiple state championships and regional recognition. Their equipment and warm-up routines reflected years of serious competitive experience, creating immediate comparison points for Rebecca's relative newcomer status. The ranking format required each competitor to shoot 72 arrows over 4 distances, with cumulative scores determining tournament positioning. Rebecca's military training had included similar evaluation protocols, but the public nature of civilian competition created different psychological pressures. Spectators moved freely around the venue. Officials monitored every shot for scoring accuracy, and competitors' performances were announced regularly over the facility's sound system. Rebecca's first-round performance established her credentials. Immediately, her scores placed her 3rd overall among 64 competitors, behind only 2 shooters with extensive national tournament experience. The accuracy was consistent with her practice sessions, but achieving it under tournament conditions impressed observers who understood the additional challenges of competitive pressure and formal protocols. Between rounds, Patricia provided technical feedback focused on minor adjustments that could improve consistency under tournament conditions. Her coaching approach reflected understanding of both Rebecca's capabilities and her preference for minimal public attention. Suggestions were delivered quietly, without dramatic gestures or commentary that might draw additional spectator interest. The tournament's media coverage included local television stations and regional sports publications interested in documenting Colorado's competitive archery scene. Rebecca's unexpected ranking performance made her a natural focus for interviews and feature coverage, creating pressure to engage with reporters seeking human interest angles about her background and rapid competitive development. "I understand you're relatively new to competitive archery," said Jennifer Walsh from Colorado Sports Today, approaching Rebecca during a break between rounds. "Can you tell us about your training background and what brought you to tournament competition?" The question represented exactly the kind of inquiry Rebecca had hoped to avoid, requiring careful navigation between truthful response and privacy protection. Media attention would inevitably lead to deeper investigation of her background, potentially exposing details of her military service and reasons for maintaining civilian anonymity. "I've been practicing archery for several months," Rebecca replied. "Carefully. Patricia Owens has been an excellent coach, and Mountain View Archery Club provides outstanding facilities for development." The response was technically accurate while avoiding specific details about her previous experience or training background. Jennifer's expression suggested she recognized the evasive nature of the answer, but tournament protocols limited her ability to pursue follow-up questions during active competition periods. As the elimination rounds began, the tournament's competitive intensity increased substantially. The field narrowed from 64 competitors to 32, then 16, with each round requiring higher scores and greater consistency. Rebecca's military training proved advantageous for managing competitive pressure, but civilian tournament protocols created unique challenges that required real-time adaptation. The quarterfinal round matched Rebecca against Maria Santos, a three-time state champion with extensive international competition experience. Maria's reputation within Colorado archery circles was formidable, built on technical excellence and mental toughness under pressure. The pairing generated significant spectator interest, with many observers curious to see how Rebecca's rapid competitive development would measure against established elite-level performance. The head-to-head format required each competitor to shoot alternating sets of 3 arrows, with cumulative scores determining advancement to semi-final competition. Rebecca's approach remained consistent with her practice methodology, focusing on technical execution rather than dramatic shot-making or competitive gamesmanship. Maria's experience showed immediately through superior tournament tactics and pressure management. Her shooting rhythm was precisely calibrated for optimal performance under observation, and her mental preparation included techniques for maintaining focus despite spectator noise and competitive tension. Rebecca's relative inexperience with head-to-head competition created early disadvantages that required significant technical excellence to overcome. The match developed into a display of contrasting competitive philosophies. Maria's approach emphasized consistency and pressure application, using her experience to create psychological advantages through superior tournament knowledge and tactical awareness. Rebecca's methodology relied on technical precision and mental discipline developed through military training, treating each shot as an independent task requiring maximum focus and execution. Through 6 sets of arrows, the competitors remained within 2 points of each other, creating mounting tension among spectators who recognized they were witnessing an exceptional contest between different approaches to competitive excellence. Rebecca's scores reflected her practice capabilities, but Maria's tactical adjustments demonstrated why tournament experience provided significant advantages in high-pressure situations. The decisive moment came in the 7th set, when Maria's attempt to increase pressure through faster shooting rhythm resulted in a technical error that pulled her shot slightly off-center. Rebecca's response was characteristic of her military Background: maintaining identical form and tempo despite the opportunity to capitalize on her opponent's mistake. Her 3 arrows grouped within the inner ring, creating a lead that Maria couldn't overcome in the remaining sets. The victory advanced Rebecca to semi-final competition against defending state champion David Kim, whose tournament record included multiple regional titles and Olympic Development Program participation. The match was scheduled for the following day, providing time for technical preparation and mental recovery from the quarterfinals' intensity. That evening, Rebecca sat in her hotel room reviewing video footage of David's previous tournament performances. Patricia had insisted on detailed opponent analysis, treating the semi-final match as an opportunity to test Rebecca's capabilities against the state's highest level of competitive archery. The preparation felt familiar from her military days, when mission success depended on thorough intelligence gathering and tactical planning. David's competitive style reflected years of elite coaching and international exposure. His technique was textbook perfect. His mental preparation included sports psychology training, and his equipment represented the latest technological developments in competitive archery. More significantly, his tournament experience included pressure situations that had forged exceptional mental toughness and tactical awareness. The challenge represented a significant step up from Rebecca's previous competitive experiences. David's capabilities extended beyond technical shooting skills to include advanced understanding of tournament psychology, pressure management, and tactical adjustment during competition. Defeating him would require not just excellent shooting, but superior competitive strategy and mental resilience. The semi-final match drew the tournament's largest spectator crowd, including several college scouts and national team coaches interested in evaluating Colorado's top competitive talent. Rebecca's rapid advancement had generated curiosity about her potential for continued development, while David's established reputation guaranteed strong support from the local archery community. The match format required each competitor to shoot 48 arrows over varying distances, with cumulative scores determining advancement to the championship final. Unlike the previous day's head-to-head competition, the semi-final allowed both competitors to establish individual rhythms and shooting strategies without direct tactical interference. Rebecca's approach remained consistent with her established methodology, treating each shot as an independent technical challenge, requiring maximum focus and precision. Her warm-up routine reflected military training principles, emphasizing systematic preparation and mental discipline rather than dramatic confidence-building exercises. David's preparation showcased the sophistication of elite competitive training. His warm-up included specific psychological techniques, technical adjustments based on venue conditions, and tactical planning for different competitive scenarios. His support team included coaches, equipment specialists, and mental performance advisors who provided real-time feedback and strategic guidance. The contrast in support systems highlighted Rebecca's relative isolation within the competitive archery community. Her preparation relied primarily on Patricia's coaching and her own mental discipline, without the extensive infrastructure that supported established elite competitors. The disadvantage was significant, but not insurmountable for someone accustomed to operating independently under pressure. The early stages of competition favored David's superior tournament experience and tactical awareness. His scores reflected optimal competitive strategy, building early leads while maintaining technical consistency under pressure. Rebecca's performance remained strong, but showed the effects of competing against more sophisticated tournament preparation and strategic planning. Through 24 arrows, David maintained a 4-point advantage that represented significant pressure given the semi-finals' importance and spectator attention. Rebecca's military training provided mental resilience for pressure situations, but civilian tournament protocols created unique challenges that required continued adaptation and learning. The turning point came when venue conditions changed due to afternoon wind patterns that affected arrow flight characteristics. David's experience included training for environmental variables, but his tactical approach had been optimized for morning shooting conditions. Rebecca's military background included extensive training for adapting to changing field conditions, providing advantages when technical adjustments became necessary. Rebecca's response to the changed conditions reflected her military training in real-time problem-solving and adaptation. Her shooting technique included automatic adjustments for wind effects, developed through years of precision shooting under variable environmental conditions. The capability allowed her to maintain scoring consistency while David struggled with tactical modifications to his established competitive strategy. The final 12 arrows showcased Rebecca's exceptional capabilities under pressure. Her scores improved as conditions became more challenging, demonstrating the mental toughness and technical adaptability that had defined her military service. David's performance remained strong, but showed the effects of tactical uncertainty and mounting pressure from Rebecca's comeback. Rebecca's final arrow struck the center ring with force that seemed to echo across the suddenly quiet venue. The shot completed a comeback that eliminated the defending state champion and advanced her to championship competition against Maria Santos, who had defeated her opponent in the second semi-final match. The victory generated immediate media attention and speculation about Rebecca's background and training. Her ability to adapt to changing conditions and perform under extreme pressure suggested experience that extended beyond casual archery practice or standard civilian coaching. Tournament officials and media representatives began asking more specific questions about her competitive development and future plans. The championship final was scheduled for the following afternoon, providing limited time for preparation and recovery. Rebecca's advancement to the title match guaranteed significant media coverage and spectator attention, creating pressure that extended beyond simple competitive performance to include broader implications for her continued involvement in tournament archery. That evening, Colonel Martinez called to congratulate Rebecca on her tournament success and discuss opportunities that had developed within military and veteran shooting communities. Her performance had generated interest from multiple organizations, seeking skilled instructors and program developers for precision shooting initiatives. Rebecca, what you're doing out there is reminding people that elite military training produces capabilities that don't disappear when someone changes careers, Colonel Martinez explained. There are programs that could benefit from your expertise and compensation that would exceed your library salary significantly. The conversation represented another decision point about the direction of Rebecca's post-military life. Accepting coaching or instruction opportunities would mean embracing public recognition of her military background and capabilities, abandoning the anonymity that had defined her civilian transition. The championship final drew the tournament's largest crowd and most extensive media coverage. Rebecca's opponent, Maria Santos, had spent the previous day analyzing video footage of Rebecca's semi-final performance and developing tactical strategies for the championship match. Her preparation included consultation with coaches and sports psychologists about competing against opponents with military precision shooting backgrounds. The final match format required each competitor to shoot 60 arrows over multiple distances, with scoring protocols that emphasized consistency and pressure management. The winner would receive Colorado's state championship title and automatic qualification for regional competition that could lead to national tournament participation. Rebecca's warm-up routine attracted attention from spectators and media representatives. Curious about her preparation methods and mental approach, her systematic technical preparation reflected military training principles, while her calm demeanor suggested confidence that impressed observers familiar with championship competition pressure. Maria's approach showcased the sophistication of elite competitive preparation. Her warm-up included specific psychological techniques developed through sports science research, technical adjustments based on detailed venue analysis, and tactical planning for multiple competitive scenarios. Her support team provided real-time feedback and strategic guidance throughout the preparation period. The early stages of the championship established the competitive dynamic that would define the entire match. Maria's experience and tactical sophistication created early advantages, while Rebecca's technical precision and mental discipline provided consistent scoring that prevented significant deficits from developing. Through 30 arrows, the competitors remained separated by a single point, creating mounting tension among spectators who recognized they were witnessing exceptional competitive archery. Both women demonstrated capabilities that exceeded typical state championship standards, elevating the match to a level that impressed national-level coaches and officials present for observation. The middle stages tested both competitors' mental resilience and strategic adaptability. Maria attempted to increase pressure through tactical changes designed to disrupt Rebecca's rhythm and consistency. Rebecca's response reflected military training in maintaining focus under psychological pressure, treating each tactical challenge as an independent problem, requiring calm analysis and appropriate response. Rebecca's breakthrough came during the final 20 arrows, when her military training advantages became most apparent. The cumulative pressure and physical demands of championship competition favored her exceptional mental discipline and technical consistency. Her scores improved as conditions became most challenging, while Maria's performance showed slight degradation under the mounting psychological and physical stress. The final 10 arrows transformed the championship into a demonstration of Rebecca's exceptional capabilities under maximum pressure. Her shooting rhythm remained identical to practice sessions. Her technical form showed no degradation despite fatigue and pressure, and her mental focus appeared to intensify as the competition reached its conclusion. Rebecca's final arrow struck the absolute center of the target with precision that seemed to freeze time for everyone present. The shot completed a championship performance that combined technical excellence with mental toughness in ways that impressed even experienced observers familiar with elite competitive archery. The victory earned Rebecca the Colorado State Championship title and immediate recognition as one of the state's premier competitive archers. Media coverage focused on her rapid development and mysterious background, generating interest that extended beyond regional archery communities to national sports publications and veteran organizations. During the awards ceremony, Rebecca accepted her championship medal with the same quiet dignity that had characterized her throughout the tournament. Her brief acceptance speech thanked Patricia for exceptional coaching and Mountain View Archery Club for providing outstanding training facilities while avoiding specific references to her military background or future competitive plans. The ceremony concluded with presentations of qualification certificates for regional and national tournament opportunities. Rebecca's championship performance had earned automatic entry to competitions that could lead to international representation and Olympic Development Program consideration. The opportunities represented pathways to elite competitive careers, but also commitments to public visibility and extensive training obligations. Following the ceremony, Rebecca found herself surrounded by coaches, officials, and media representatives interested in discussing her future plans and competitive development. The attention felt overwhelming after years of deliberate privacy, but she recognized that exceptional performance in public competition inevitably generated interest and opportunities. Patricia approached through the crowd with obvious pride and excitement about Rebecca's championship victory. Her coaching success with an unknown competitor had enhanced her own reputation within Colorado's archery community, creating opportunities for expanded coaching roles and program development. "Rebecca, you realize what you've accomplished here is extraordinary," Patricia said with genuine emotion. "State championship in your first serious tournament, defeating competitors with years of elite experience. This could be the beginning of something really special." The comment reflected expectations and opportunities that extended far beyond Rebecca's original goals for joining Mountain View Archery Club. Her search for peaceful recreation and personal challenge had evolved into championship competition and potential career transitions that would fundamentally alter her carefully constructed civilian life. Marcus appeared among the well-wishers, his expression combining pride with obvious satisfaction about his association with Rebecca's success. His early misjudgment of her capabilities had been completely forgotten in favor of claiming credit for recognizing her potential and supporting her development. "I knew from the beginning that Rebecca was special," Marcus announced to anyone within hearing distance. "The precision, the focus, the mental toughness. You don't see capabilities like that very often in civilian archery." The claim represented significant revision of their actual history, but Rebecca chose not to correct his narrative publicly. Marcus's support had become genuine over recent weeks, and his influence within the archery community could be helpful for navigating the increased attention and opportunities that would follow her championship performance. As the venue emptied and equipment was packed away, Rebecca found herself alone with Patricia, discussing the immediate decisions that would determine her continued involvement in competitive archery. Regional qualification deadlines required quick responses, while coaching and sponsorship opportunities needed evaluation and decision-making. "You don't have to decide everything tonight," Patricia observed, recognizing Rebecca's obvious ambivalence about the choices ahead. "But championship performance creates momentum that can be difficult to recapture if opportunities are declined." The advice reflected understanding of competitive sports dynamics, where exceptional achievements created windows of opportunity that closed quickly without decisive action. Rebecca's military background included similar decision-making frameworks, where timing and commitment determined mission success or failure. That evening, Rebecca sat in her hotel room with her championship medal and a collection of business cards from coaches, officials, and media representatives who wanted to discuss her future in competitive archery. The recognition felt satisfying after months of private preparation and quiet persistence, but it also represented fundamental changes to the anonymous civilian life she had carefully constructed. Her phone contained dozens of messages from former military colleagues who had learned about her championship victory through veteran networks and social media coverage. The responses ranged from congratulations to job offers, reflecting the military community's pride in her continued excellence and interest in her potential return to professional shooting environments. Colonel Martinez had left another voicemail with specific details about instruction opportunities that would utilize her competitive demonstration of continued elite capabilities. The positions offered substantial salary increases and opportunities to work with military and law enforcement, precision shooting programs that needed experienced instructors. The choices ahead represented more than simple decisions about continued tournament participation or career transitions. They involved fundamental questions about privacy versus recognition, anonymous service versus public achievement, and personal satisfaction versus professional advancement. Rebecca opened her laptop and began researching the regional and national tournaments for which her championship victory had provided qualification. The competitive pathways led through increasingly elite levels of competition toward international representation and Olympic development opportunities that would require total commitment and public visibility. At the same time, she reviewed the coaching and instruction opportunities that had developed from military and veteran organizations interested in her demonstrated capabilities. The positions offered meaningful work utilizing her skills for important purposes, but they also meant embracing public recognition of her military background and technical expertise. As midnight approached, Rebecca made her decision with the same calm certainty that had characterized her championship performance. She would accept Patricia's coaching for continued competitive development while exploring instruction opportunities that could utilize her skills for veteran and youth development programs. The anonymous library life had served its purpose, but her championship victory had revealed capabilities and opportunities too valuable to ignore. She drafted emails accepting regional tournament qualification and requesting additional information about coaching positions with veteran shooting programs. The responses represented commitments to increased public visibility and professional development, but they also honored the skills and experience that had defined her military service and civilian achievement. The next morning, Rebecca drove back to Mountain View Archery Club for the first time since her championship victory. The parking lot contained more cars than usual, suggesting that news of her success had generated increased interest in the facility. As she walked toward the entrance, she noticed her championship photograph had been added to the display case near the front desk. Inside, she found Patricia waiting with obvious excitement about continued coaching opportunities and competitive development plans. Several club members approached with congratulations and questions about her future tournament schedule. The attention felt different now, based on demonstrated achievement rather than curious speculation about her background and capabilities. Marcus appeared with his usual entourage, but their dynamic had evolved to reflect Rebecca's established status within the club hierarchy. His role had shifted from antagonist to supporter, creating more respectful relationships throughout the club's social structure. "Rebecca, I've been telling everyone who will listen about your championship performance," Marcus announced with obvious pride. "Mountain View has never had a state champion before. You've put us on the map in Colorado archery circles." The comment reflected genuine appreciation for Rebecca's achievement and its positive effects on the club's reputation. Her success had created benefits that extended beyond her personal satisfaction, to include enhanced status for the facility and its members within the broader archery community. As Rebecca began her practice session, she realized that her shooting routine felt different now. The movements remained identical, but they were informed by championship experience and confident knowledge of her capabilities under maximum pressure. The meditative aspects of archery that had originally attracted her to the sport had evolved to include competitive excellence and public recognition. The morning session attracted visitors from other clubs interested in observing championship-level technique and training methods. Rebecca's practice routine became an informal demonstration for developing archers curious about elite preparation and competitive development. The visibility felt comfortable now, based on earned respect rather than uncomfortable scrutiny. During a break between practice rounds, Rebecca received a call from the director of a veterans shooting program interested in discussing instruction opportunities. The conversation revealed possibilities for meaningful work that could utilize her skills while serving veteran communities and youth development programs. The opportunities ahead represented the integration of her military capabilities with civilian achievement, creating pathways for continued service and professional development that honored both aspects of her identity. The championship medal was recognition of individual achievement, but it also opened doors for contributing to causes and communities that needed her expertise. That afternoon, Rebecca signed contracts for regional tournament participation and veteran instruction programs, committing to a future that embraced her capabilities rather than hiding them. The anonymous library life would continue, but it would now be balanced with competitive archery and coaching responsibilities that utilized her skills for broader purposes. 6 months later, Rebecca stood before a group of young veterans at a Colorado shooting facility, teaching precision techniques that could help them transition their military skills to civilian careers and recreational opportunities. Her state championship medal was displayed in the facility's trophy case, but her satisfaction came from watching former service members discover confidence and purpose through improved shooting capabilities. The archery club had become a different place, more welcoming and focused on technical development rather than social hierarchies. Marcus had evolved into a genuine friend and training partner, while Patricia continued coaching Rebecca for national tournament competition that could lead to international representation. Rebecca's story had spread through veteran networks and shooting communities, inspiring other former service members to embrace their capabilities rather than hiding them. Her championship victory had demonstrated that military skills could translate into civilian achievement, creating positive recognition for veteran capabilities and potential. The quiet librarian, who had joined Mountain View Archery Club seeking peaceful recreation, had discovered that her greatest achievements came from embracing her capabilities rather than concealing them. The split arrow that started everything had become a symbol of precision and authenticity, inspiring others to pursue excellence regardless of their backgrounds or the expectations of others. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.